Good morning, everyone. Thank you for waiting. We are live here at Vespasiano in Minas Gerais. Welcome to the earnings call first quarter 2022 for the Pardini Group. We would like for you to let you know that the participants have their microphones off, just listening to the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll begin the questions and answer session. Questions should be addressed exclusively via chat. Uh, I will read the questions and the directors will answer. We will not open microphone for participants to ask questions. Please ask those questions and write your name to know who's asking. The slides are available at the www.hermespardini.com.br/RI in the earnings session. Before we move forward, that any statements that are made during this presentation regarding the company's outlooks on business, expectations, financial goals, are beliefs and assumptions of the board of Hermes Pardini Company with information that is currently available for the company. Expectations for the future are not assurance of results, and they involve assumptions because they're referring to future events and therefore rely on circumstances that may or may not happen. The general economic conditions and international factors can affect the future results for the company and may lead to results that materially differ from those that are expressed in future expectations. Here we have Roberto Santoro, our CEO and Chairman, Alessandro Ferreira, Vice President of Commercial Marketing, Camilo Lelis, Executive Finance and Investor Relations, Adriana Linhares, Executive Director for PSC, Guilherme Colares, Executive Director for Operations, Fernando Ramos, Executive Director for Lab-to-Lab Business, João Alvarenga, Executive Director for IT and Digital, and myself, Carlos Biel, Executive Manager for IR and M&A. I would like to then open the floor for Roberto Santoro, our CEO and Chairman. Thank you, Biel. Good morning, and it's a great joy to have you all here for another earnings call for the Pardini Group. We are happy to be able to share once again relevant and consistent figures, emphasizing our guidelines of bringing end-to-end results. So just as important as reaching financial results is to do that respecting the health of millions of people who rely on our tests and diagnostic tests. Regarding our results, the quarter was extremely positive, and we broke 7 records: test volumes, net profit, gross revenue, EBITDA, gross profit, EBITDA margin, and ROIC without goodwill. And Camilo will share the data, but I would like to point out a record in the number of tests processed in this quarter on our history, 38.7 million tests, which shows a growth of 19% compared to the first quarter of 2021. It's important. We have also won market share both in PSC as well as Lab-to-Lab, and we have worked very much in favor of growth of new business opportunities for the company, besides acquisitions that strengthen our portfolio and increase our relevance and optimize our costs as well. And we are looking at the growth of recurring tests, and when we exclude the COVID tests, we had a growth of volume of 20.7% in the first quarter of 2022. And once again, I'd like to highlight and emphasize that the company continues growing without the presence of COVID tests, despite the importance of being a molecular biology test for contagious disease, which also becomes a recurrent test, but at its more stable levels according to the decrease of the pandemic itself. Talking specifically about Patient Service Center, that business unit, we have achieved growth of 29.4% in total gross revenue compared to the same period last year, year over year. If we once again exclude COVID tests, growth was 43%. Regarding growth of PSC, I'd like to highlight our growth of São Paulo and our strategy in the São Paulo market. And just as it was foreseen, announced in our earnings calls, the group has been growing exponentially in this market, emphasizing our relevance towards patients and HMOs in Sao Paulo. Uh, Within the states where we have business units, PSC business units, Sao Paulo was the major operational highlight. In 1 year, our revenue in this market more than doubled when we compare year over year, first quarter 2021 compared to 2022. It's worth pointing out the ramp up of a contract of a major HMO in Sao Paulo with a certain exclusivity in servicing almost 700,000 lives. On this quarter, also in the Sao Paulo market, we opened a new unit in Moema and announced the expansion of our operations in the capital city from the acquisition of certain physical assets from Davita Medical Services, which will be transformed into diagnostic Pardini medicine labs with emphasis on clinical analysis. And thanks to this operation, very soon we'll have the opening of 10 new units ready to receive all of our service portfolio. Moreover, in the second quarter, we'll have the opening of 4 new units in the metropolitan area of São Paulo: Osasco, São Bernardo do Campo, Mogi das Cruzes, and Guarulhos. Therefore, if we compare the number of PSC business units in São Paulo early 2021 with the end of 2022, in that time frame, considering organic and inorganic growth and acquisitions, we go from 5 to 38 units, over 600% growth expansion. It's worth pointing out that our growth in Sao Paulo is also followed by a close relationship with HMOs, insurance companies, and major companies in Sao Paulo, showing that the Pardini Group is not only reliable, but also effective in terms of its service provision. Another important initiative was the launching of Saúde Mob, and that, or Anywhere Lab. This has been recently launched with this concept of Anywhere Lab. It's a direct relationship with the client, a digital experience of hiring services that will work 24 hours a day. It can be anywhere to broaden the opportunities for direct servicing to patients. It starts with operations in capital cities in metropolitan regions, such as São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, Goiânia, Belém. Services of clinical testing, vaccines, and even ultrasound echo that can be provided in home. And in the next coming months, Saúde Mob will be expanded and scaled into certain strategic markets with a synergic operation with Lab to Lab in synergy. We have more than 2,000 partners in 2,000 municipalities and labs that will help us with synergy and will provide great benefit along this concept of Anywhere Lab. With great technology, a deep dive into the journey of our clients. They're enabling for this direct servicing to our patients. It's very different than at home, because servicing at home, it's an expansion of PSC core business. This is a different journey, a different experience, embedded technology, and it's also different to be faster, better routing, a better understanding and convenience to the client who's using this convenience at their own home or at the company that they work for. Now, talking a bit about Lab to Lab, that business unit has had a significant growth of 2 digits in average volumes, with recurring revenue ex-COVID reaching maximum historical levels. The innovative fronts, also revenue generating fronts in Lab to Lab, as the hospital support, something recent, very much focused on providing support to hospitals that also have an outpatient clinic network, that have also have an oncology structure given our specialized portfolio. So both hospital support, as well as another revenue source Pardis, our distributor, Pardini Distributing, represented in the first quarter of 2022 a total of 5.5% of gross revenue of that business unit, lab to lab. And that increase is extremely relevant compared to the fourth quarter of 2021. That was possible due to the increase in SKUs made available in Pardis portfolio, our distributor, and the stability of operations, hospital operations that are still moving along a growing trajectory in hospitals that have outpatient clinics, which have hospital services as their core, but adding outpatient clinics in oncology and specialized tests. In the second half of 2022, our distributor will take a new leap in innovation with the launch of a marketplace platform for health sales. It'll be an open network for sales personnel in the website, enabling for businesses to be performed not just with partnering labs, but other companies from other segments. This is something unique in Brazil, which is being developed and standardized by the Pardis team in a partnership with a technology company called Vitex. As for toxicology, another very relevant business for Pardini, Pardini has distributed forensic tests throughout Brazil with some international initiatives. And those toxicological tests have driven the company's results. Gross revenue achieved of 23.8 million in the first quarter of 2022, representing a growth of over 19% year over year. And now, in closing, I'd like to talk a bit about our launch, Precision Care. In the last few weeks, the Pardini Group launched this initiative, which is a new digital relationship platform which will connect patients, physicians, HMOs, companies, hospitals, labs, and the pharma industry. Regardless of the brand chosen, the region where you are, the type of test to be performed, or the client's profile who will interact, all of that will take place in one single digital platform. More than just improving the user's journey based on connection and convergency principles, Precision Care intends to use AI to generate data and relevant analysis for those stakeholders and for the entire healthcare chain, Brazilian healthcare chain. Besides, the Pardini Group with Precision Care takes a major leap towards its vision to be known as a data generating player, generating clinical insights, diagnostics with great relevance for the value chain. It's worth pointing out that the Pardini Group has this potential of generating relevant insights considering the diversity and the size of Brazil's population and where we work with diagnostics testing. This is something one of a kind given our infrastructure and our reach, and something extremely necessary to start thinking about acting upon Brazilians' present and future in terms of health economics and healthcare. Precision Care is an evolutionary project. On this first wave that's already out there, the platform is already available for the physicians, whether on the mobile or on a laptop. With a few clicks, the physicians can access their clients' tests, discuss clinical cases, have support from our group, and clarify questions that they have from portfolios tests and other personalized medicine questions, those tests that require more scientific interaction and with a clinical lab relationship. Those who have been watching our growth trajectory know that most of our results in the last couple of years came from the viability of an extremely innovative project that we baptized as Enterprise, the way we deal with our production model for clinical testing. And clinical analysis and all its repercussions and effectiveness and quality, stability, controls, and especially for those who work with lab to lab in turnaround time. So, extremely secure, safe, and fast associated to our logistic infrastructure tends to converge into a precise result and ever faster for all Brazil. This model revolutionized the way we process clinical testing. It's a benchmark, not just in Latin America, but also in other geographies and brought relevant benefits, still fostering innovation for our entire healthcare network. It is considered a world benchmark today, especially for foreign labs, suppliers. Um, so just like enterprise, what we did in the productive model, precision care will be a catalyst for innovation for the entire company, based on deep user journey analysis, and we mentioned in the consolidation of relevant data analysis for the Pardini Group and its clients. Uh, More than that, enterprise, we have a modeling that's called enterprise digital. It is an interaction and access product for the client to access the lab to lab. It's uh, it's showing enterprise as an extension of a partnering lab through a unique digital experience, an innovative and uh, gamified experience, bringing in real time the processing of samples and reducing uh, time for support and providing transparency, which is what a major lab does for the partnering lab. Traceability, reviews, real-time tracking, and that transparency is extremely important because labs have their differences in terms of investments, platforms, and investments in proficiency and quality and other necessary requirements. And in closing this first part, I once again want to thank for your kind attention and emphasize our commitment to our business. We are a relevant company, proud of everything we do towards the benefit of value-added medicine, the diagnostics chain. The results we provide our investors is the consequence of serious work involving human lives. That's why we work with so much care and responsibility. I also want to thank our over 6,000 employees of the Pardini Group working hard, not just in our operation, but as well establishing these new relevant innovation initiatives in France. Now I'd like to hand the floor to Camilo, who will present the figures for the quarter more objectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roberto, and good morning, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for attending our earnings call. As Roberto has mentioned about our record values, it's important to underline our company's ability to resume growth in the first quarter of 22. We have had record levels and values in the ex-COVID revenue. We've also hit record levels in gross income and EBITDA in ex-COVID operations. This shows our ability and flexibility in decision making, as well as internal controls of activities in the group, whether we consider COVID testing or not. In addition to how fast we operate and also the flexibility of our platform, we also serve several customers, and we were very agile in the integration of the companies we acquired. Very quickly, we were able to mobilize our groups and to reduce and even eliminate, in some cases, the costs in our structure related to the activities related to COVID-19. Also, we focus on fixed costs, CapEx, working capital, as well as a capital structure that was established in the beginning of the pandemic as a buffer. And that has already been settled and realigned, so we are back to our levels of activity. All these efforts, now that we are resuming to the new normal, are also supported by new initiatives like precision care, enterprise digital parties that provides logistics support and supply support to the group, the hospital support initiative, the M&As we conducted uh, following our internal KPIs, and the accelerated growth we are experiencing in the state of São Paulo, the initiative Lab Class in Belo Horizonte, and Saúde Mobi, as Roberto mentioned. So now let's talk about our historical values. For example, a volume of testing in the first quarter. There were several actions that were achieved, such as increased market share because of the business effort in the lab-to-lab segment, a significant growth in PSC segment in São Paulo, the performance of new avenues of business of the company, and the recently made acquisitions. All of that have led to a higher volume of testings processing in a quarter, the top volume ever, almost 39 million testing. We can reach 160 this year. That would be using 90% of our installed capacity. So if we exclude COVID tests, this will be 27% growth. And if you consider COVID testing, the growth was 19% vis-a-vis the first quarter of 21. In the collection channel of lab to lab channel, we had also record volumes in the first quarter of 22. Now that we are resuming some of the ex-COVID tests, there was an increase in low complexity testing like biochemistry, hormones, and also specialized testing like personalized medicine and also pathology and toxicology that have grown 2 digits vis-a-vis the first quarter of 21. In the PSC segment, it's important to highlight a significant increase of 3 digits in volume in São Paulo in the first quarter, even without considering COVID, because of the new contract we have signed with Amil as of the end of 2021. In consolidated amounts, the organic growth and ex-COVID was above the level of 2 digits. In terms of gross revenue, ex-COVID, we have had record levels. There was a 30.2% growth in the first quarter of 22. Consolidated gross revenue again hit a new record totaling 582 million reais, a 13.4% growth vis-a-vis first quarter of 21. The COVID tests accounted for a gross revenue of 92 million, 16% of our consolidated sales. In the PSC segment, we had a 42.2% growth in gross revenue ex-COVID, excluding COVID. And compared to the total gross revenue in the same period last year, the growth totaled 29.4%. In the first quarter of 22, in the lab-to-lab segment, there was an increase in the average volumes per client, with recurring invoicing ex-COVID reaching maximum historical levels for the first quarter. If we exclude COVID testing, the gross revenue growth was of 21% vis-a-vis the same period last year. The gross income had a 20% increase in the first quarter vis-a-vis the first quarter of 21, with a positive impact resulted by the ex-COVID revenue that is increasing now, also an absorption of fixed costs with a higher volume of tests, and the same cost of production, same as last year. There were also acquisitions that added in terms of volume, and there was a transfer of prices in the lab-to-lab segment in February 22 and in the PSC segment. We also had increased costs as logistics that were impacted by the increase in fuel costs. There was also an increase in labor costs in the third quarter of 21. So the gross margin in the first quarter had a 160% base points vis-a-vis the first quarter of the last year. EBITDA margin, and net income. There was also a record that EBITDA reached 140 million in the first quarter of 22, with a 31.8% increase vis-a-vis the first quarter of 21. EBITDA margin reached 25.9% in the first quarter of 22, vis-a-vis 22.3 in the first quarter of 21. This increased margin is due mainly to the record levels in volume combined with an active management of uptake and production costs that were diluted with increase in production and also control of general administrative expenses, even in a challenging environment as we currently have with an inflation rate close to 2 digits. Operating expenses with sales, general administrative as a percentage of the net revenue was 10.9% in the first quarter of 22 vis-a-vis 12.2% in the first quarter of 21. This drop was due to the effective management of the company expenses in the period, even with higher volumes. And I would like to highlight the sales expenses that were practically stable in comparison to the first quarter of 21. In general administrative expenses, we also work very strongly with managers, and the variation of 4 million reais was due to the acquisitions that we made in the previous year and also this year. Net income reached 64 million reais in the first quarter of 22, a 27.5% increase vis-a-vis the first quarter of 21. Net margin totaled 11.8% in the first quarter of 22, and 130 base points increase. Our effective rate of IR and CSLL taxes was 27% in the first quarter, while in the first quarter of 21 was 28.2%. Compared to the first quarter of 21, there are certain events that had an impact on that income, such as increase in financial expenses because of the various acquisitions that we made, and some of them are negotiated and funded, and also a drop in the effective tax rate that we have and an elevation in the tax deduction we had. And as a result of this positive effect, our ROIC, excluding without goodwill, was 46.9% in the first quarter of 22, 122 base points increase vis-a-vis the same period of last year. Our operational cash flow started very positively, and the operational cash flow totaled 44.1 million in the first quarter. Our control of disallowance and delinquency is below market levels. It accounted just for 0.15% of our net revenue, while this allowance accounted for 0.38% of the net revenue. So we started 2022 by delivering a first quarter with great indicators. We were able to expand our margins and our profitability in the company, even with a drop in COVID tests. We are very confident and committed to the ex-COVID strategies we have designed to expand value generation to our shareholders in an environment that is very challenging, and also there is inflation. Now I'd like to turn over to Biel. Thank you.
Thank you, Camilo. I'm going to start the questions and answer session. Everyone who would like to ask questions, please write them over the chat. And please mention your name for us to identify you more easily to know who's asking the question. Our first question, actually, there are a few from Emerson Vieira, Goldman Sachs. The average ticket was flat year over year, but we have several mobile parts, COVID, toxicology, M&A. Could you mention what the negotiation has been with the HMOs, those who pay the bill? I think Alessandro, maybe? Yeah. What we have contracts with the HMOs in the locations where we have PSC. There are dates that are not coinciding over the year. Throughout the year, we seek a balance between our inflations and the need to pass that through or pass it over. We have been able to move in all negotiations with HMOs. There is an ease, a feeling of tranquility in terms of, or better, an understanding of it is necessary to seek that balance out. The fact is that when we observe the PSC price index, which is a basis that we compare internally at a basis of 100, we have been moving forward with those price index above 100%. So having gains in price throughout the last few years. And those increases or adjustments happen throughout the year. So we have managed a great balance in all locations we work with PSC. The other sources of payment, direct clients, industry, there are contracts with companies, pharma companies and industries, considering the same basis as we use for the HMOs. Just adding, Emerson, there is a mix and volume composition to be compared in a period with a reduction of the COVID volume. The average ticket tends to decrease a bit. It didn't fall so much considering the compensation we had with new sales volumes and the pass through of prices, the passing over of prices. Uh, Next question, I'm going to continue with Emerson. He asked three questions. Could you comment on what was the contribution of the contract on the partnership, if you have other similar conversations with other payment sources? The contract was, this agreement was put together with Camilo at the end of last year. It's been gaining maturity, maturing throughout the month, and especially as we move forward with the new units. We started a new business unit in the first quarter. This week we opened another one, and also a major service through mobility, Saúde Mob. Emerson, the fact is that Pardini in São Paulo, with the expansions and the openings of new PSC units, with the increase of anywhere lab services for Saúde Mob or the at-home service, we have become a very relevant strategic option for HMOs. There is ongoing conversation with other with HMOs in different models of partnerships, not the same as the one we have with the current HMO, and all of that with this perspective, gaining capillarity, service capacity, digital interface, and integration with the HMO. Pardini becomes a strategic option. We have not opened the participation of the share of HMOs, but we have managed to bring other HMOs to Pardini operations. We are extending our accreditation within the current HMOs we work with, so the mix is very healthy for us, for the company. Next question from Emerson, for us to wrap up with his three questions. It's about Saúde Mob, our anywhere service. It seems to have a different proposition, but I just would like to understand if you saw any level of cannibalization between PSC and Saúde Mob, and if that motivated the launch of the new brand. Thank you for your interest in different areas of the business. What motivated this new value proposition and mobility was consumer behavior, customer behavior, especially during the pandemic, where they experimented on delivery services, and they want to continue having that with a different characteristic. Up until before the pandemic, what we called at-home service was something that was provided at home at the first hour of the day, usually for bedridden patients or those who have difficulty, some kind of a mobility difficulty. This new model matches the model where they want to receive services at home or at their office or at an event or other activities away from home over the weekend. So what motivated that modeling? It's a different proposition. There's no kind of cannibalization. Actually, it's the opposite, the broadening of mobility, of health delivery, as we call here at Pardini, comes to increase our service capacity and lengthen our frontiers, our borders of especially in metropolitan areas that we do business. So it's a way to expand without having the need of a fixed cost of opening new brick and mortar units. So we expand through mobility. Thank you, Alessandro. Next question about lab to lab from Stella Strand from JP Morgan. How do you see the performance of B2B operations? What are the initiatives along those lines, and what will the growth be from now on? So here we go. Good morning, Stella. Thank you for your question. It's important for us to talk a bit about our B2B business. My vision is that B2B performance has been extremely positive in the last few quarters. This has been repeated in the first quarter of 2022. First quarter 22, our great challenge was to compensate for the effect of the COVID revenue in the first quarter last year. Remember, COVID was very representative, very significant. Over 25% of B2B revenue came from COVID. And we were able to do that in the first quarter this year. When we look at our total B2B revenue, we had a growth of 1%, as Camilo presented just now. But when you discount the COVID effect and perform a recurring results analysis, we had an increase of something like 21%. So we're showing double-digit growth above 20%. And that growth comes from certain factors. First, from a price readjustment, which took place at the end of January. So we partially made up for the inflation of the period. And most of that growth comes from increasing lab-to-lab volume. So as Camilo emphasized, we're talking about that increase that comes from biochemical testing, low complexity, low tests, and high complexity tests as anatomical pathology, personalized medicine, and so forth. And so the increase in volume it comes from different sources. First, throughout the last few quarters, we have been able to increase our client base. So in the earnings, in the release of disclosure of results yesterday, first quarter, we had more than 6,000 customers generating revenue in this last quarter. Our record, it's over 3% of growth of a customer base compared to the first quarter of last year, considering that some of these clients are relevant clients. We're talking about clients with an average revenue that is much higher than the lab-to-lab revenue. We have seen an increase of Pardini's share of wallet within existing clients, both based on our increase of share that we're taking away from the competition. There's also the aspect that we have seen an increase in the percentage of outsourced testing from customers, customers that are decommissioning their equipment or outsourcing their internal production, now recurring to Pardini Labs. And this has been emphasized by total support strategies. When we are closer to our customers, we can issue the reports at a shorter turnaround. They feel more reliability on outsourcing their testing portfolio over to us. There's an increase also of share of wallet coming from new businesses. So Pardis distributor, Roberto just mentioned, there are a number of initiatives foreseen for the coming months in the sense that we are going to increase our online sales channel, launching the e-commerce platform. Stella, up until now, we've had 33% of our lab-to-lab customer base have made at least one purchase through Pardis. So we have quick penetration, have had so far, but there's still a lot of room to grow in the customer base, whether in the number of customers slash clients who buy that with us, and also in terms of portfolio, because we have been increasing the number of SKUs. So hospital support is also an extremely important strategy. Roberto and Camilo both mentioned. I'm not going to uh, repeat it, but it's part of our strategy. So, long story short, we have been gaining market share in the last quarters. That's very clear to us. And when we look forward, we see that those initiatives of total support, hospital support, parties, share of wallet growth, commercial initiatives have been bringing results. Our expectation then is to continue presenting high growth rates on the B2B segment in the next coming quarters, and that's what we're going to work for.
I'd just like to add to what Fernando Ramos question. Stella, during the pandemic, and we mentioned that a couple of times, we even claimed that Pardini would come out of the pandemic better than when it got into the pandemic. I think you all remember that because we made adjustments in our production logistics services model. We developed new tasks, they're more specialized. So these infrastructure adjustments we made is the what makes the company diagnostics, medicines, and infrastructure company, not just to our customers, but also this network of clinics and hospitals and different services in the country. So, as Fernando mentioned, this is one of the factors that were responsible for our success when we resumed our business after um, the pandemic. So, what we did in this period is that we optimized several processes that were required by the pandemic. But this has given us competitive edge today, especially because of an increase in market share and share of wallet in B2B. That's a trend we expect to see in the upcoming months. Thank you, Alessandro. If you want to ask questions, you can send them through the chat box. I have another question from Rodrigo Semeão. So when you ask your question, just add your names, please. So this is the question of Rodrigo. Do you plan to expand your business to the countryside of the state of São Paulo, larger cities in that region, or would you rather consolidate your business in the metropolitan area of São Paulo first? Good morning, Rodrigo. So regarding your question, we have a great potential of expansion in the metropolitan area of São Paulo. That's our main focus today. Our organic expansion of units that is taking place, as we mentioned before, has been successful. And the metropolitan region of São Paulo was chosen to meet the local needs of HMOs. This is the largest healthcare market in the country. We also present because of a highly relevant brand called IAX in the region of Santos in the shoreline of São Paulo. It's a very relevant region, and our brand has very high um, value, very good reputation, a leader in the market. Also, we have presence at Clínica Odevan de Mosgliato in São José dos Campos. This is another way of expanding our business. It focuses on women's health. And this is also new learnings that we group can get from this particular issue of women's health. So we have a nucleus of intelligence in this group. So in addition to EX or IX and Dr. Devania's clinic and also our organic expansion in São Paulo, all of that shows how we are expanding in this region. And of course, sometimes it's important to make partnership with brands that are very relevant with high medical value. Those are potentials for the future. But right now, our focus is on the metropolitan area of São Paulo because of the need of HMOs, healthcare operators, insurance companies, Unida, Zunimed, and all the ecosystem of healthcare operators that need to have high quality services that are very efficient to meet their needs in such a big market. So that's our goal. Thank you, Roberto. We have a question here. The person did not identify himself. It's about the Northeastern region. What are the perspectives of the technical and hospital services of the Pardini Group in Fortaleza city, and what is the importance of that operations for the growth of your operations in that region? That's Fernando. Could you answer this question, please? Good morning, uh, Anderson. Thank you for your question, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk about NTH that we have in Fortaleza. It was inaugurated in January 21. It's been operating for almost a year and a half and very successfully. It's been able to meet high expectations in terms of the timeline requirements of our customers in that region. We want NTH to be used not only to serve a large hospital we have in the state of Ceará, but also to be used to serve lab-to-lab segment customers in that region. And that has already started in the end of 2021. We needed to wait the hospital operations to be stable, of course, and once they were stable, we were able to bring volume of tests from other customers. It's been running very well. We have seen growth month over month in the volume of customers from the lab to lab segments that are sending their tests to be run at that clinic. And we're looking for opportunities to increase that volume too. So we have very positive perspectives, and the feedback of our customers has also been um, very positive. The region of Fortaleza has not been served by other types of supporting services. So now we can provide very competitive levels of service in terms of a turnaround time for the lab-to-lab segment in that region through the NTH, the Hospital Technical Center. This concludes our Q&A session. I will turn over back to Roberto for his final remarks. Thank you, Biel. I would like to thank everyone who attended this meeting. Let me just reinforce a very important point, which is diagnostic medicine. And this is what the Pardini Group is all about. This is the core of our operations, and the same is true for other relevant companies that also focus on this business. This is a very important business individually. It's important for primary and secondary health care, for outpatient services, for HMOs who, through services like that, can have more rational use of those services. There's also good integration with most HMOs. Diagnostic medicine in Brazil, in terms of rational use, in terms of integration, has been very cost effective in healthcare in Brazil. The inflation rate in medical services is lower than the average, is the lower individual expenses that we see. So it is important to consider that diagnostic medicine is a business that is of utmost importance as an individual service or integrated with other business, other links in the chain. And this is not it's not a trade-off in other medical services in Brazil. Of course, we need to consolidate vertical services in Brazil, in hospitals, maybe more affordable services. But all of that are virtuous pathways that do not reduce the importance of diagnostic medicines as an individual business. I would like to reinforce this point to you. I think this is true everywhere. Diagnostic medicine has grown in size and in importance. It focuses a lot on research and development to generate new tests, to consider avoidable costs, to avoid complications, to avoid more chronic diseases in the future. So that's a point I would like to underscore. And this is true not only to the Pardini Group, but for other companies that operate in diagnostic medicine in Brazil. Once again, I would like to thank you for your presence here, our directors, our employees, our investor relations area led by Carlos Biel. And this team is open to clarify any questions you may have. Thank you very much for your attention and have a great day.